I think the only thing which will keep you away from food is money, right? If you need to find out, okay, how do I make money? So how many entrepreneurs here? How many entrepreneurs have pitched to investors here? Okay. Looks familiar? This is what your image of an investor is like, right? Rich, fat cat, screens or lots of pitches. But what's the commonest answer an investor gives? How many of you have heard a no from an investor? I'd be very disappointed if no one said that, because by default, that's a commonest response. What I want to emphasize, though, is this no should actually not be coming from the investor. And I want to emphasize entrepreneurs need to learn to be able to say no to investors. Honestly, bootstrapping is a far more effective way of being able to run your startup. And I'm saying that as an angel investor. Multiple reasons. For one thing, it proves that you can implement. You're actually gaining so much more credibility. If I get 10 pitches in a day and I can see someone who's bootstrapped successfully and is generating revenue and have a choice as to whom to fund, whom would you think I would fund? Whom do you think you would fund? So I think that's common sense. And honestly, I think part of the problem with the startup ecosystem today is it's become very skewed. We kind of give too much importance to investors. But I think if we just remember to focus on our customers, I can promise you the investors will follow. But suppose you do decide that, okay, been there, done that, I need to continue to grow, I need to raise money. And I think this is an important slide for two reasons. That there is a right time and a right place to raise money, but it depends on where in your journey you are. So if it's just an idea or a concept or a team, then usually bootstrapping is the way to go. If you have rich friends and family members, that's next. If you notice, the angels come later on. Either you have a prototype, you've got some kind of traction, and then obviously as you keep on growing, we then hand you off to venture capitalists and banks. But please note, there are other interesting options which could be explored. For example, there are public support for grants, especially if you're doing social impact stuff, and there is crowdfunding. So the important thing is there is no shortage of money for the right entrepreneur. It's just that you need to find out whom you want to raise it for. Raising money from friends and family, especially rich father-in-laws, is extremely attractive. It's hard for a father-in-law to say no to you. But the problem is you make a lot of mistakes. And if you make these mistakes, these are actually red flags for professional investors who will turn you down. Common things are, a lot of people, because you read about the startups, hey, everyone wants to invest in the next Uber, right? They don't understand how risky it is. They don't understand that they're stuck with you for the next 5 to 10 years. And then dinner table conversation can get extremely touchy when you've taken money from someone and you're not able to give it back. I think this is extremely important. As an angel investor, I think part of my role is also to educate startups and the entrepreneurs. And this is a very common problem. People say, I've got this great idea. I can do this cloud kitchen for biryanis. I can do it for something else. Or I can do it for some exotic dish. But the problem is ideas are a dime a dozen. And anyone who wants ideas, please ping me. I get lots of bright ideas every single day. More than happy to share them with you. Ideas are absolutely worthless. What you actually need is to implement them, which is exceptionally hard. And then to implement them so someone's willing to give you money is much, much harder. My request is share your ideas with multiple people. The more the ideas you generate, the better your ideas will become. And feedback from people will help you improve your ideas even more. Please don't worry about anyone stealing ideas. Honestly, that just doesn't happen. I think this again is important. People kind of, hey, I'm not from IIT, I'm not from IIM. No investor is ever going to return my calls. And actually, that's not true. And in this day and age, finding investors is simple. It's not easy, but it's still simple. You can use LinkedIn. You can send cold emails. You can get warm introduction. I think the trick is to position yourself as a thought leader. And the best way of doing that is to generate lots of content. You're the domain expert. You know far more about food, kitchens than I ever will. And if you can constantly turn out content so that I can think of, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, your credibility improves a lot more. I'm much more likely to fund you. And please remember, all you need to do when you contact the first time is to get permission to get a meeting. No one is going to say yes in the first meeting. So if you want investors, 2 steps here. Find the right investors. There's no point in talking to VCs who don't invest in food tech companies, for example. You're just wasting your time and you're wasting theirs. So it's got to be the right stage, early stage, for example, right industry. And preferably investors who've invested startups in the same stage as yours, because startups vary so much, right from pre-revenue all the way to large startups like Uber. So not every investor is going to be right for you. Getting introduced by mutual contacts is easily the best way. If you can get a warm introduction, then that's the first thing. But please don't spam investors. Don't send hundreds of emails. Don't copy and paste. That's complete waste of your time. You've got to do your research on each particular investor. The one thing an investor hates is getting a dear sir / madam, please invest in my company. Please look at my pitch. That's actually being rude and disrespectful. And be very specific when you send the email. All the email will do is pique some curiosity and interest, so the investor will want to meet you. Have realistic expectations, please. Investors are busy. We try to do our best to respond, but sometimes things fall between the crack. And the easiest thing for me to do is to say no. Because, again, every time I say yes, that means I have to take a meeting, I have to listen, I've got to talk to someone else. It just adds to my plate. But please be persistent and patient. The reason I may not have responded to your email is it may have ended up in the junk mail. So there's nothing wrong with keeping on trying. I think this is something which is definitely worth looking at, especially if you're lucky and you can get admission into some of these accelerators. You get a chance to talk to other founders who've been there, done that, which is what learning the trade is all about. And you actually get a halo, especially if you go to a startup, for example, like Y Combinator, because then investors will take you much more seriously. Lots of mistakes people make. One of the things is, hey, I want a non-disclosure agreement. Forget it, don't waste my time. That just marks you as a rookie. And if your valuation is going to be a discounted cash flow, which shows me, anyone can do Excel gymnastics. I can create an Excel spreadsheet that in 10 years, I'm going to have a turnover of 1,000 crores. That just doesn't help at all. And the problem, again, is lots of wannabe entrepreneurs. Everyone says, I want to do this and I want to do that. And you talk to them after 3 years and they still want to do exactly the same thing. What are some of the red flags? If someone comes to me with just an idea with no implementation, as far as I'm concerned, if you're not willing to do anything about it, why would you expect me to give you money to do something about it? I am not your father-in-law. Again, hockey stick curves for revenues all the time. Easy to do that on Excel, but realistically just doesn't work. And if anyone says, I have no competition, for me, that's a red flag, which means either your idea is so crappy that no one else wants to do the idea, or that people have tried the idea and it's failed in the past, or you're so lazy that you've not bothered to do your homework and figured out who the competition is, because there will always be competition. And it's okay to use buzzwords like blockchain and AI, but don't try taking us for a ride. This is the one thing which really scares entrepreneurs, what is called the due diligence process. And it's really not complicated. What are we looking at? Do you have a market which is of interest? Do you have a business model? But for me, the most important thing is the team, and whether the team has actually been able to accomplish something, what we call traction. Funding, again, is a very touchy issue, and part of the problem is this information asymmetry, because investors do this all the time for a living. Entrepreneurs maybe will do it just once. So everything is negotiable. Nothing is written in stone. It's well within your rights to negotiate. And the two key things are valuation, how much money do you want, and control. How much of your company are you willing to give away to the investor in order to raise money? Again, legalese can be quite scary. Please get a good lawyer to protect your interest. Not a good idea to use your cousin or your uncle who happens to be a criminal lawyer. He may not know anything about startup law. And the important thing is focus on areas of agreement. There are lots of standard templates. Try using standard templates. Don't worry about the things you disagree about. Concentrate on the things you agree about. I think this is, again, an important slide, because you know what? You're the founder. You've got 100% of your company. Then obviously you need a team, so you give more of it away, and you just continue going all the way down, whether it's an accelerator, whether it's an angel, VC. The reality is, if you want to take money from investors, by the time you're ready for an exit, the amount of your company you're going to earn is not going to be too much. Please keep that in mind, and that's the price you need to pay. Money is an expensive commodity. And if you're willing to pay that price, then I think this is a great part to take. But don't underestimate the complexities. Whom do I fund? And everyone will keep on telling you, we back the jockey, but that is actually the truth. And when I say back the jockey, I don't care about whether you're from IIT or IIM or your academic resume at all. As long as you're making money, as long as you have delighted customers, honestly, everything else becomes irrelevant. When I say we back for non-financial reasons, this is true for most angel investors. Honestly, startup investing is not a great financial return. It's illiquid, locked up. As Shanti said, 80% of startups are going to fail. No one knows which is going to fail. But the reason you do it is because you want to give back to the next generation. It's fun to hang out with young entrepreneurs who are optimistic. And as an angel investor, you get that chance of being able to, yes, I can actually create something which will behave and stand the test of time. What are the three things we look for? Integrity, curiosity, and humility. And honestly, these are not negotiable. And when I say LOI, that means the learning on investment. The return on investment is icing on the cake. And honestly, I tell angel investors, only invest money in startups which you're prepared to lose without losing sleep over. Because otherwise, you make your life hell, and you definitely will make the entrepreneur's life hell. Again, big difference. Not all investors are the same. Do your homework. And the best way to do your homework is by talking to other entrepreneurs the investor has given money to. And they will tell you whether this guy is a good guy or whether he's going to make your life miserable. And investors can make your life miserable. But please treat the money with respect. It's hard-earned money. Think of it like a marriage, a long-term marriage, not a quickie which you're having. And therefore, if you treat it with respect, your investor will treat you with respect back again. Some pearls of wisdom. I worry a lot when investors ask about, when will you give me an exit? How much return will you give me? How can the poor entrepreneur possibly answer any of these questions? Startups are complex adaptive systems. They're fragile. No one really knows what's going to happen. And then putting all this onerous burdens is really unfair. And any investor who doesn't respect your time, I think you should beware of. If he doesn't respect you now, he's not likely to respect you afterwards. The trick is, don't push sale. People don't mind buying. As an investor, I'm happy to sign checks. That's part of my job. But I prefer doing it of my own accord. So we don't mind buying ourselves, but we definitely mind being sold to. And again, learn to negotiate. Don't get fixated. Don't get too rigid. There's always a certain amount of give and take. And remember, this is a long-term marriage. So the more you create a win-win negotiation now, you're creating buckets of goodwill. So during your hard times, your investor will have your back. People get excited when they get funding. You know, this is what the media press carries all the time. And it's not a validation, really. The only validation of a successful business is repeat paying satisfied customers. I think everything else, honestly, is a vanity metric. And you know, if I say no to you, it's not a personal rejection. I wish I had an unlimited amount of money and I could sign checks for everyone. But the reality is I can't. I need to pick and choose. Two things. Don't keep on comparing yourself with the Mark Zuckerbergs and the unicorns. Really, they're the outliers. They're the abnormals. You know, you don't expect to run a 100-meter race within 10 seconds. Similarly, you should not worry about those. But also remember, investors are always optional. The best time to reach out to investors is when you do not need them, because then you can negotiate terms which are favorable to you. Big difference, and people often get confused between what VCs and angels are. Yes, we're all early seed stage investors, but as an angel investor, I deploy personal money. So the only person I need to answer to is my wife. On the other hand, VCs have lots of terms and conditions because they're investing other people's money and they need to return that money back, which means they're on a time frame. And this is why VCs will often keep on pushing will keep on pushing entrepreneurs to keep on growing and keep on scaling up, irrespective of unit economics, irrespective of anything else. And it doesn't seem to make any sense to the outside world. Why are these guys keeping on growing even though they're still not making any money? But that's their own sense of logic which they have. You need to understand that too. The reality is most startups fail, and that's fine. The trouble is we don't know which one's going to be. And you will keep on raising more money as you keep on growing, and that's fine too. It's okay to fail. There's nothing shameful about it. What the important thing is to be resilient. And again, I think the right reason to become an entrepreneur is not necessarily for the financial return, but for the emotional return, because you will learn so much about yourself. You will learn so much about the world. Nothing in the world will ever teach you that. It's far better than an MBA, let me tell you that. It's a lonely journey, and people will often think you're cracked. You may think you're cracked when you have to spend sleepless nights worrying about whether you're going to be able to find the next hire, whether you're going to be able to meet the right orders. And other founders are the best source of support. So help them, and they'll be happy to help you. There is a big difference between mentors, coaches, and consultants. Consultants charge for their services, which is fine. If they're adding value, take it. Mentors do it free. But the problem is there are lots of parasites in the startup ecosystem. So beware of those. And if nothing else, I think the one thing being an entrepreneur will teach you is learn. You'll learn so much during this journey. You'll be a completely different person at the end of it. Lots more information on this website. And hopefully when I come the next time, we'll see not this particular slide, but this does happen to most entrepreneurs. But if you read this book, you will be so much smarter about how to raise funding than anyone else will be. And if you don't want to spend any money and you want to be frugal, this is available on SlideShare, and it's free, and it's actually a great guide. A lot of problems with raising money is the information asymmetry, because funders know so much about giving money, entrepreneurs don't. These books will help you reduce some of that information gap. Thank you so much, guys. In time for lunch, so that wasn't too bad, right?
So we can open the floor for about one
Sure,
question.
sure.
We'll take 1 to 2 questions, if any.
I'm very happy when no one asks questions. That means, everyone understood everything. I did such a good job that I don't need to say anything anymore, and that's fine too.
That was a crystal clear presentation. Yes.
It was really excellent, sir. So thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
So one question I would have for you is that today, I mean, even if I were to take the context of dark kitchens only, so there are restaurants who are doing dark kitchens, and then there are founders who would only do dark kitchens and without the restaurant. Now, if you as an investor, as an angel investor were to look at it, who are you going to prefer more?
I think that's a great question. And like I say, I come from a position of I don't understand anything about the business. It's part of the entrepreneur's job to convince me that he has the right to ask me for my money. The entrepreneur is the domain expert. And if there's an entrepreneur who's doing only cloud kitchens and can convince me, hey, this is how much revenue I'm generating, you give me money and I'll generate even more, happy to give him the money. If on the other hand, there's someone else who says, hey, I run a real kitchen and a cloud kitchen and I can make money for you, I'm not allergic to money. I don't care how the money is being made, honestly. So I don't have any preconceived answers to any of these things. And the reality about startups is no one has the answers. We're all experimenting all the time. And what may work today may not work 2 years down the road. And what may work in the US may not necessarily work in India. And I think that's the great opportunity for entrepreneurs, to be able to reinvent the future.
Sure. No, I think that's an excellent answer. Just a second.
Hi, I'm Anand from Coimbatore. I'm from the startup background, so mostly startup funds look at 10x now, 1000x return. That's not happening in food at all. Then why would somebody, a venture capitalist, be interested in investing in this rather than any startup fund?
I think that's a great question. And remember, angel investors are very different from VCs. And VCs don't care about 80% of their portfolio dying. They're just looking for those 1 or 2 guys who will potentially become unicorns. Angel investors have a slightly different perspective, and everyone has a different perspective. For example, you heard Murthy. Sandeep's Lightbox is, he only does 8 funds, but he's married to those 8 companies for the rest of his life. I think it just depends on you finding someone who's on the same page, on the same philosophy. I think of myself as a frugal investor. I'm saying, I'm going to give you this money. At the end of this, you show me how you can become cash flow positive. Once you become cash flow positive, you're master of your own fate. Then it doesn't matter. I'm not going to force you to keep on increasing your revenue. And there are multiple different ways of doing it. So I don't think there's any one standard formula. I don't think there's just one right way of doing it. All I'm trying to say is be respectful of the investor and try to create a win-win situation. To give you another example, there's something called revenue-based financing. There are multiple things. An investor has choices, correct? What can I do with my money? I can put it under my mattress. I can give it to a bank, put it in a fixed deposit. I can invest in the public markets. Why am I willing to invest in a startup? Because I need a return which is that much more. And if you can come up with a business model which says, hey, you know what? I can give you a return which is 40% year on year. I would be a fool not to take that. All I'm trying to say is don't necessarily listen to the standard wisdom. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. You need to find one person who thinks the way you do, and you're sorted.